Right.
Okay, cool. So the general arc of this, or the idea was, as a board member, I was like hearing, I was able to have like individual conversations with people and kind of hearing different bits and pieces. And then at a certain point, I was like, man, it would be really nice to like see everybody in the space together and kind of just hear a little bit from everybody and just like get a sense all in kind of one swoop. And then also sort of in a step towards integrating a membership um, at Earthdance to sort of have a way to begin to like invite members and people in, and then kind of like long-term potential of like membership, some leading, allowing or inviting some things to be voted on by members, and um, sort of different explorations of governance and things like that, and sort of like a longer term look. So I I witnessed a community assembly in my local kind of anarchist organizing communities, and I thought it was a really cool thing. Just sort of like a rapid update of like what's going on and how to get involved. Um, and just to sort of get a sense of the place and what's happening. Um, so thank you all for being here. Um, I'm looking at an agenda over here. Does anybody, I'm planning on taking some notes, but I'm not like the best at note taking. So if anybody else wants to do that, um, just in case our AI genie fails us in the transcription, um, that would be helpful.
Well, for my part, I have everything already written out already because I'm going to essentially read it. So nobody has to take notes on my update, if that helps.
Okay, cool. Maybe I'll make a document for if there's other people that have done that, that we can just share those and those can live in one place. Cool. Um, how should we start? DJ, do you want to kick it off with sort of like a brief director's report, and then we'll go down the list of people who responded on the submission. I think it's a randomized order, just to say.
Um, yeah, I could do that. I mean, I know yeah, I think there's probably a lot of stuff that kind of overlaps with a lot of
Or
people's
do you want to go at the end?
domains. Well, I would that would be the other option of like what hasn't been mentioned that I think is still important, and maybe then add that in.
Okay,
Maybe that makes more
that
sense.
that works for me. Yeah.
Um, okay.
Okay, super great. And just yeah, I think I kind of already said it, but this is recorded and will be accessible, I think, after the meeting, to people who weren't here and to people interested in hearing these updates. So yeah, the meeting will go beyond just like this space. Do we
And
have
maybe I'll just check. I'm assuming I'll just put it on our YouTube channel. Is everyone okay with that being put on there and being available to the public?
That would be amazing, Christos. Thank you. Does anybody here want to be a timer? Want to time 3 minutes for each person?
I can time.
Thank you. Cool. Then I think I have the first person on my list is the garden. Tell us what's going on in the garden. Hey,
Yeah,
Benoit.
good. So I'll give the garden update. I have no idea how long this is. So I
That's
just wanted to make sure because Neil is not here that I don't miss anything that was important for us to have said. So spring is here. We already have some seedlings in the basement that we're growing already for our little basement nursery. So over the past 2 years that Neil's been living here, almost 100% of our food waste has been composted. So we've been doing this through the composting system that Neil built and mixing our kitchen waste with straw, turning the bins, and eventually that's our primary fertility input. So we have our own fertilizer all from the kitchen, which is really exciting. Yeah. So our production yield from last year's garden, as best we can calculate, because the garden is available for community members to really harvest and use personally. But it added up to what we kept track of, added up to a retail market value somewhere between 6,500 and 7,000, as best we could tell. So this harvest was, for feeding residents, community members. Some was supplementing the meals during events and retreats, and essentially amended our compost. Unfortunately, the majority of our root crops, the parsnips, potatoes, beets, had to be composted. Well, we made a choice to compost it because we weren't sure about, the possibility of toxins or bacterias related to the aging leach field that the garden's been sitting on. So last season, we really came to terms with this, that much of that garden has been placed directly over an aging leach field. So fortunately, he had already begun shifting the garden beds towards the new potting shed and greenhouse project that he's hopeful to continue. I'm sure you guys have seen the potting shed frame already set up, just to expand the existing garden beds. So these beds are far enough away from the leach field, and so they'll continue to be sown, grown, and harvested. But towards the end of last season, we opened up new ground for food production for the kitchen, and so we'll have those beds that we have closer to the compost, and we'll have new beds in the northeast corner of the orchard between Nine Mountain and Earthdance. So we're really excited about this new garden area. It's going to allow for a lot more ease in bringing the food into the kitchen. We can go like directly to the walk-in from there, and hopefully enhance the orchard aesthetic there. These beginning years in that garden are going to be mostly like annual vegetable production. And then over the years, it'll eventually like evolve into more of a perennial garden. You'll have the fruit trees and the grapes, asparagus, blueberries, stuff like that. So that's exciting also.
Sorry, that's about,
What's that?
so
Ooh,
that's three.
Wow. Just
okay.
one little bit for time. How much more do you have?
I don't have, I'm just going to tell you about what we're doing for this season's project list.
Should we say
Because that's really, yeah. Okay. So basically, this season's abundant project list is focused mainly on garden infrastructure. So we'll be finishing the potting shed, beginning the attached greenhouse, building fences in both gardens for deer protection. I'm working on an herbal tea garden with only native medicinal and edible plants for tea and seeding just behind the lilacs that are to the left of the picnic benches facing the garden. And I think Melanie is going to continue working on her lavender and herb garden there. Also, we're hopeful to create, garden focused workshops and work days. So like regularly scheduled work days with collaborative garden meals, composting workshops, or other guided hands-on learning experiences, garden work weeks or retreats, including contemplative practices, meditation, movement, group and individual garden art installations. We're totally open for suggestions from the community, any other interests people might have in the garden. So yeah, we'd love to see more people working in the garden and, just experiencing all things garden. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
That's very exciting.
Thanks. Yep.
Okay, next on my list is Melanie with programming.
Hello. Okay, get my brain on. So yeah, I think with programming, initially, what we want to uphold and preserve are our CI jams that are what attracts people for many, many, many years, and making sure that we have those intact and have a system working with the CICO and Ask team, and working with our host, and sort of refining that as we need to for each jam, seeing what comes up and clarifying if there's anything that needs to change, and just making sure that those structures are in place, and just continuously every year making sure that we are that it's a well-oiled machine, because those jams can be a lot. And then in between, we have these cocoa jams. Right now for this year, we basically have only for queer jam and our gratitude jam. One thing I did focus on for this year was rentals, because for us, rentals is really financially helpful for us. And so in between our major programming, I have created weekends where I'm dedicated to rentals. We obviously have been, Christos has been working with Volker to create the CI professional training program, which we hope to have every year. He's already started with Volker to plan for next January. And then also Christos is also focusing on nomadic college, which is happening again this year, and we hope to have them next year. It might have a different date, but we're trying to work with them because they're in a very small part of Italy right now, and it's difficult for them to travel. But we're hoping that we can continue that. And then going back to rentals, one thing that is really, really important for us too is fostering relationships with rentals, to have them come every year. We're working with Janice Singer, who you might all know through the community, who's a dancer as well. We had set one school year for her therapy training. And that will end in June. And then we've already created contracts to sign for the following year. And we hope that we can foster those relationships to continue income source throughout years to come, hopefully. And there's just other smaller groups that come every year that just really love our spaces, and just to continue that relationship with them. Another important thought process is to really work with the land and try to find programming with Garden, and also our Earthdance Stewards group, and building, getting the community involved with building, and really trying to focus on programming that can really help Earthdance thrive. And also, we need some fixing and help from the community, and how we can entice people to come for programming for that. Those are all, I think, pretty much pretty clear of where there's a lot of more details in between that. And then also, we have these little smaller weekend programs that are really important for community building, as well as our second Sunday jam every month, which we find someone to just host a sweet little CI class before those jams. And one thing that we have found is that those have become really lovely. People, they've become really full, and people really come for these just community gatherings. And that's one thing about, we know that these smaller workshops don't necessarily make a lot of money, but we notice that it creates a sense of community, and it fosters that connection with especially local people. And that feels really important to the way that we run this space. I think that I'm always interested in having people come with ideas for programming and expanding what we can offer, especially towards minority groups and different thought processes around therapeutic somatic practices and things like that. I don't think I'm missing anything. I might be missing something, but sorry.
Cool. Thanks so much, Melanie.
Yeah.
Christos, do you have any you want to share?
I could share about Spiral and Root, and also one with the membership. DJ, if you want me to say a little bit, or if you want to talk about that, or any of the board members want to talk about that.
You can say a little bit, and then John will fill in the gaps on that.
Cool. So you guys probably saw that right now where we're at is this membership feedback form that we've put out. think we set the date as April 5th now as the deadline for collecting feedback. Last time I checked a few days ago, we had maybe 19 respondents. Most of it has been positive. There's been some useful feedback on some details that's specific, but for the most part, you know, most people are okay with it. Some people have a little bit of an issue with like charging. I think the financial bit we probably knew was going to be maybe the most contentious aspect of it. And we also want something that means buy-in, you know what I mean? Like it's not just like checking a box, but something that means committing. So it's been an interesting mix to try to find.
Hey, Christos, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Could you repeat the last bit?
Yeah, let me check my mic level. Sometimes my computer. Probably that. Okay, this is probably better, yeah? Yeah, my mic was really low. Thank you for letting me know. So I think, yeah, once we close that, we'll look through the feedback and then I guess coordinating with, I've been mostly coordinating with John Adams and DJ about the membership and then figuring out systems once we open it up for people to sign up. So there's some work on the back end to figure out that. Spiral and Root, I think was really successful this first time around. We got a lot of evaluation forms filled out by the students and teachers and organizers. Me and Volker are meeting pretty regularly now to set everything up for next year. DJ, do you have a sense of the budget in terms of what the profit was? I've had a hard time kind of analyzing it, but we did pretty well. You're muted.
I think with the last thing, what Spirit showed was I think 20,000.
So that was like, I know the board authorized kind of like trying to keep the prices low. We have a sliding scale of 4 to 5 tiers and also kind of like limited number of tickets for the tiers. We're going to do that again so that there's incentive for people that need financial break if they register early. Maybe $600 or $800 cheaper than the most expensive ticket. So there's some incentive in that way. In terms of returning teachers, let me just look really quick. First week, we're returning Mirva Makinen and Lani. This is sketched out. We haven't completely confirmed with everyone yet. But those two teachers coming back again. Week 2, returning would be Meta and Sarah. And then we're looking at either Paul Singh or Leilani Weiss to invite for the first time. And then for week 3, we'd have Chris and Ray returning, and then new teacher would be Samara Sarai out of New York. So one less teacher than last time. We're trying to, some of the feedback was that it was great teachers, but there was like a lot of material. So trying to create a little bit more continuity. The dates were almost confirmed would be January 8th to I think the 29th, which gives the staff a week after the New Year's Jam. That was part of the issue last year was it was pretty soon after, and also the illness that came with the New Year's Jam carried on into Spiral and Root, and pretty much everyone got sick for a good chunk of the 3 weeks. So we're trying to consciously create some separation. And there's a lot of pieces because then Jana's group comes in on February 5th. So it's just trying to find that sweet spot. But I think we also figured out Massachusetts colleges, I think, go back to school on the 29th or 30th. So hopefully it's still accessible for the winter college break. Yeah, there's just a lot to do. We're hoping to open up registration by late April, basically, for Spiral and Root. And that's 2 of the projects that I'm involved in.
Great. Thank you so much. Olive, our site coordination.
I think I'm similar to DJ in like kind of my stuff touches everyone's stuff. And so I'd prefer to fill in at the end
Fantastic.
or take any questions if people have questions.
I'll reslot you at the end and then we'll have a moment for questions for everybody. CICO. Is that you, Michael? Are you sharing?
I'm going to share for CICO. So we've got some stuff that was put together by a small team of us from our delegation canvas. So I'm gonna kind of do like a half read and half talk thing. But I'll say that I think SECO exists because there was a desire for like a sort of adherence to the culture and traditions of contact improv at Earthdance. And in the past, has been a lot of churn with staff. So it was intended to be sort of long-standing members to hold the seasonal jams and the focus of contact improv at Earthdance. And part of what we do is, I mean, we support the seasonal jams. So we are the people who invite facilitators, and we are a liaison for all the different groups that help to put on the jam. So there's the Ask Team, Accountability Support Care, and the BIPOC team, and the staff at Earthdance and the facilitators in SECO. And we kind of hold all that together and hold meetings that get people all together. And as it's a change, some of those groups are changing groups and also other groups. So it's good just to get on the same page with the team that's going to be a jam, and we're the ones that hold that. And yeah, so I think we're the main support for the facilitators at the seasonal jams. We have been there's an idea of exploring a new structure. So instead of just having hosts for the seasonal jams, the summer and winter sell out consistently, but the spring and fall don't. So we're exploring the idea of having a teacher or special guest facilitator come in for those two jams. And part of that's out of the opportunity to be like, oh, maybe we could attract, by having a more of a teaching focus, we could attract more dancers to those two jams, the Equinox jams. But also there's a way in which we're inviting hosts to hold this thing for our community, which sometimes hosts have no idea like what we do at jams. And so it ends up us being a lot of like teaching and holding hands. And so we kind of realized also too that sometimes it's easier just to hold the structure and then let people come in and sort of put the paint on it. So partly it has to do with that as well. Let's see. The people on the SECO we usually have a team of about 8, and try to keep it sort of in that range. Sometimes it dips down. But generally when there's a need for more people, then we'll, offer an invite, somehow through an email or website. And sometimes people get asked if they want to join. Sometimes people ask to join. So there's a lot of different ways that people can get on. And we have a process of onboarding where people get there's a meeting and a vote and then shadowing. So it's a whole process. We have about 8 people right now, I think. And last thing on the list is, I already talked about. Yeah, and I'll just say that part of our job is to make sure that the jam has all the pieces in place. And if there's skills that are missing, we help to hold the newcomer lunch and the newcomer orientation, and support the BIPOC facilitators with their events. So part of our job is to make sure everything's getting taken care of, and if there's anything that's missing, we fill in the spots either ourselves or by other community members to do that. So kind of like big picture, just making sure everything's going well.
5. Thank you, Michael.
Great. Perfect. Earth stewards, Earth integration stewards.
Okay, yes, hi. So Earth Federation stewards are currently Itebe, Christos, Tom Murray, Christopher Collins, Neil, John Adams, Melanie, Otto, Katie, and me. We also consider the Earthdance land to be a member of this group. I'm spokesperson for this group, but a lot of what I'm saying here was passed on to me by the various people who were leading different subcommittees, with some editing by me for time, because there's a lot to cover here. The group was started in August of last year and it emerged. It was TJ Shields really started. The impetus was a meeting engaging Michael Dunning's skills and reading the energetic undercurrents of the landscape in an effort to see where there was blockage or stagnation. So the Earth Storage group has become a place to listen, share, get feedback, gather energy to work on various projects connected to the Earthdance land. And here's a quick rundown of some of the key projects that we've been talking about and working on recently. So first is trails, and this was really started by our wonderful neighbors, Natasha Brooks-Berduti and Corey Woodard. And then I got drawn in as another neighbor and somebody who spends a lot of time out in the woods and has long wanted to have trails here. We finally now have a real trail system. Spans the roughly 150 acres of land that we collectively steward, and then also bridges on to 9 mountains, 42 acres of land. The trails have largely been cleared and mapped, and some have been marked. We're waiting for warm weather to continue with that and talking about signage. That's one project. Medicine cards. Christos is leading this project. It's to collect sacred medicine places on our land and compile them into physical medicine deck cards, medicine decks that can be available to all residents and guests as a way of discovering the land and connecting with it. Medicine deck could be used as a kind of oracle to seek what the deck guides you to, or as a kind of apothecary to find the prescription for what ails you. The sites would be collected by a variety of community members, accumulating the decades of knowledge and relationships with the land in one place, with the goal of sharing this knowledge with a larger community. Memorials type proposal. This is also Christos is leading this one. Said we're proposing to dedicate a site on our land for memorials and cremations, including the possibility of interring the ashes remains of community members, members of our community on our land. Site could also allow for a program where members of the community can make their last wishes known through their will, which might include direction for interring some part of their remains on our land. This could also include working with community members to include Earthdance as a benefactor in the distribution of their estate, contributing to the long-term viability of the organization financially, while also increasing the dedication and commitment to the land and its stewardship for future generations. Forest Stewardship Agreement. I don't know exactly how this started, but an organization called the Family Forest Impact Foundation has presented us with the opportunity to get paid for agreeing not to log our land, which they then sell to companies that are looking for carbon offsets. Unfortunately, there was a forester involved initially who I think sounds like was trying to make a quick buck by suggesting we log the land and then sign the agreement. And that got me quite scared about the idea of logging this land. And so I was like, whoa, whoa. And now I understand, no, that the whole point of this is actually to not log the land. So we're now trying to work with this Forest Family Impact Foundation to get this back on track. They've been a bit difficult to get to respond, but it does look promising in terms of earning us some money to do what we already intended to do, which was not log. The Earth Listening Subcommittee, new subcommittee being led by Atibi. The Earth Listening Subcommittee is a laboratory to study, practice, and innovate around the question of how to partner and communicate with the Earth to guide our projects. And she's very interested. If you want to participate, encourage you to get in touch with her. Food Forest Project, a new subcommittee being led by Katie. Food Stewardship Subcommittee is forming to coordinate with gardeners on food cultivation projects taking place on the land, including the garden and a future perennial food forest, so we may work together on a cohesive vision for food security, abundance, and sustainability for the current and future residents and guests of Earthdance. And then we come to the Wexler housing piece, which The land stores got pulled into the conversation about building some cabins for Wexler housing, probably because siting was one of the key first questions, and cabins, that's obviously land stores had thoughts on that. And then we're simply a group of involved people who are going to talk about this project, but then it started to sort of take over our meetings. So we're really trying to step back as Earth stewards from that project, but I continue to be very involved. And I think I'm sort of at this point the de facto, I don't know if I want to call myself the leader, but I'm trying to coordinate a lot of this. So in a certain sense, I'm now closing Earth Stores and giving a quick sort of sub update on the Wexer piece. And first to note that this is separate from the A-frame cabin project, but these two projects were now needing to pull together because the town zoning rules are presenting challenges for both projects that we really need to work through collaboratively. I can go all the details here or take the rest of the meeting. The gist of it is there are a number of town zoning rules that make building cabins in our land more challenging. We're working on trying to figure out how to deal with these rules. The hope is to build cabins that would provide year-round housing for 6 Wexers. We're really hoping that can happen this summer. Wish us luck. And sorry for the sort of freight train of information, but trying to cover a lot of territory here. So,
Thanks so much, Bruce.
yeah.
Okay, so before we go into a board report with John and then, or Olive and then John and then DJ, I have from Juliet for the BIPOC team. I'm going to read this. The Black, Indigenous, and People of Color BIPOC interim team is collaborating to create a recruitment process for future BIPOC team members and BIPOC coordinators at seasonal jams. Current team priorities include solidifying the availability of at-cost BIPOC tickets for seasonal jams and creating a roster of rotating BIPOC coordinators who will be well supported and resourced to support BIPOC jammers. For the Falling Leaves Jam, the BIPOC team hopes to continue last year's effort of recruiting BIPOC hosts, supporting facilitators, and running a fundraising campaign specifically for free BIPOC tickets to cover the cost of attendance for Fall Jam. We look forward to working with our community and appreciate the continued support for increasing racial equity and diversity within Earthdance ecosystem. And then from Haya, the ask, we are currently working on making our documents more organized and tracking the conflicts that happen at jams. We are considering questions that seem unanswerable, like how do we create a space of belonging in the face of political conflicts that we don't all have a shared reality about. So those are those updates. And then Olive, do you feel ready?
Yeah, guess I can speak to, the work exchange program over the past like year or so. The Earthdance calendar, as Melanie was talking about, was very full. So we'd have larger Earthdance events like Nomadic College, our jams, and then filling in weekends with rentals. So we've had a pretty consistent crew of work exchangers really since like last early summer, since last May. We've probably had 5 or more work exchangers on site, rotating in. Katie Boss is one of them. And Katie, if you want to speak to your experience at all. And so it was sort of a newer thing that we were taking on. How do work exchangers work also like these rental events that aren't like Earthdance dance events? How are we also like a hospitality business? I think people were, I don't know, we've just had amazing work exchangers come through, like really solid, wonderful people who take accountability in the space, who collaborate together, who really like, take ownership of what's going on, like great communicators, really wonderful hearts have moved through the space. And we're looking at like, what is the best model? How many work exchangers can Earthdance really support? and how many do we need to support us. Currently, our model is 25 hours per week, and you have room and board and access to events and facilities. So yeah, DJ and I and Spirit are starting to like look at that model. Does it need to be any different? But one development that happened this past early fall was the development of a new position called the artistic chaplain, who is our near and dear Brett Roach, who speaks or who holds kind of office hours for work exchangers every week for them to collaborate on their artistic and spiritual experiences at Earthdance and maybe collaborate on what we call like a Wexit performance, like maybe something they want to do at the end of their time there, or an installation they want to create in the woods, or even just figuring out like who's interested in what, like who wants to do circling, who wants to do this sort of lab. And it's felt really generous. And I just really, want to highlight Brett and appreciate the like continued time he's been offering to Earth Dance. Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Olive. John, President.
Howdy, y'all. Yeah, so I think the board spent a bit of time kind of scattered, but we're coming together and getting more focused. We've got a small but pretty like coherent group working together well. We've just brought on Christopher Collins to the board. We're excited about that. One of our efforts is to revive the sort of finance team and the fundraising efforts. And Christopher has a lot of interest, and he's feeling gung-ho about that. So we're excited about that. And yeah, there's a few things that we're looking at. One is, I think, not just us looking at, I think we kind of overheard the staff talking about this and we're already interested ourselves, but creating more clarity in like the protocols for how, say, we deal with conflict, and kind of articulating more of the culture maybe that underlies our approach to things. That hasn't really started, but there's interest in that. The membership has been an incredibly long process. It's like as long as I've been on the board, like 2 years, we've been talking about it. And so finally putting forth a proposal and seeking feedback from the community. And yeah, generally positive, as Crystal said, and there's some good feedback as well, and some things that I think we could do better at explaining the sort of reasoning for. And then yeah, sort of seeing where that takes us, and the possibility of maybe expanding this kind of thing to generate more kind of organizational proprioception, and pathways of participation. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I ought to say. Maybe jog my memory if I'm forgetting something. All right. Appreciate all y'all.
Yeah, just working on coming up with structures that are available to support earth dance in areas where it feels amorphous sometimes. So that's a focus for us this year, I would say. Whether it be yeah, just covering a lot of different areas.
Yeah, kind of system mapping of the organization and seeing if there are possibilities that arise from a clarity on what's happening and how things are flowing and where things aren't flowing. A little system-wide view that, stay tuned, might happen in the coming months.
Yeah, I'm particularly fond of the organizational proprioception. I think that's a good way to say it, and that is sort of including the community, the people, and the people who participate outside of just the immediate staff, and having a little bit. I think it's important for the community to know just how much the staff do. Like I really I want to like uplift the staff and like make it more visible how much you put into the place. Yeah, and then sort of find different pathways of support um, through that widening of awareness. Great. DJ, do you want to round us out? Is there anybody
Yeah.
that I'm missing? Olive, were you just
I have a few like groups who aren't here and represented, and I think I can say some words to those groups.
Oh,
But I could maybe go after DJ if you want DJ to go first.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'm happy to go now, and then if there's still things that I'm not mentioning, yeah, let's. So I think for me, so I've been here now for 3 years and a bit, and it seems kind of we managed to like bring Earthdance back from the brink, like create a new iteration, grow that iteration with like Melanie, Olive, Christos kind of at the front lines, jumping into a place of like uncertainty and like bringing life back. And I think now we're kind of like, oh, we're back at this kind of size that I think Earthdance has been before. And I think now we're kind of running into some things that I think were inherent in other iterations. And we're kind of like trying to look at like how can we do this differently? How can we like with the culture that we've been trying to change, how can we like create the changes so that we're not falling into the same traps? And that has, I think there's a financial piece to that, which is important. And nobody's spoken because Spirit's not here. So I can give a very quick summary. I think we've been growing, coming back to this level where we've been at before, which is around like the 500,000 mark. I think we're now like above it as a gross income. And last year we did okay. I think we came out positive with, I don't know exactly because the numbers were adjusted recently, but I think it's like maybe 20,000 in the plus or something. And then for this year, we're looking at like at a potential negative. And yeah, that's because of different things. Some of it's just is price increases, and our events have grown. Like our event income is only going up and up. And still like our staffing costs are also going up and up, and then the price of food and stuff is is more. We're having more Wexers on site that we're paying for. So we're kind of at the moment in this situation of like, okay, now what do we do? there's two big question marks that are still out for the 2025 projections, which is one, I think it's a $30,000 or $35,000 tax credit for our solar system. We have a fully functioning solar system that's running, and that was partially, or the half was paid for by the Mass Cultural Facilities Fund, and we're hope to be getting this money. And with the current administration, there's like a question mark. So that's, I think, is a kind of a finance. There's a financial piece that's related and also a bit uncertain. Ian Allen has promised us a very large donation, and because of what's happening with the current administration and how Canadians are being threatened, and how also the economy is being affected, there's both. He's expressed hesitancy about the donation, which is tough, and we don't know how that's going to play out. And also, we're worried about, like, do we need to create like pricing for international participants that are coming? We have a lot of people coming from Canada, and even just the exchange rate, it's not easy for them. So that's a bit of an uncertainty, and yeah. Let's see. And then I think there's a discussion so also on the finance piece around our pricing, and of that we're noticing that I think we when we started up again, we were quite conservative of like, we need to get people back, and our prices were quite low. And I think this year we already upped our rental prices, and we're doing that again next year. And we've also looked at our jam prices to make them more standardized, so that like the jams are kind of per day have the same price and a little bit more than they were, so that we're actually reaching this new break-even point, which we calculated. It takes about $10,000 to run Earthdance a week, so it's a thing. So I was noticing, I made some comments on the buildings and grounds because there's nobody here from that, so I can share very briefly. So I said about the solar panels, and that's hopefully going to give us a saving around $10,000 a year. So just on an annual basis of us not having to pay electricity. We also have someone donating their excess electricity generated actually to us, who's online here, which is also very generous of you, Bruce. And we also have, besides the solar, we also have a new well, which is dug and is I think is permitted, and it's not quite hooked up yet. So we're still needing to hook it up and then get the final approval. And it looks like it's all good to go, and that needs to happen by June, I think. So I think we're in line for success on that. And I don't know if folks know about this, we had a serious situation under the umbrella barn, where I think all of our joists had kind of almost rotten through. So the floor was could have potentially like collapsed through some strong jumping. That didn't happen. And actually, Paul Pugli and others, mainly Paul, like led this project to go in and just like switch out the beams. And now we're in the next phase. Victor's back. Victor's been away for quite some time with his with his sister in Arizona, and he's back. And now we're actually going to insulate and assure better drainage of water that seeps in underground from just excessive rains and snow melt. And then the one big thing that is still kind of up for is still up for like figuring out is the dorm and the mold, and if there's like structural like reforms that need to happen there in the foundations to actually stop water from coming in, because that's a difficult, complex thing, because it's built onto the bedrock, and we don't have any. There's nothing there at the moment yet of what's happening with that. Sorry, I'm coming down with something, so like I think picking up some. I'm here with my family in Catalonia.
Great, thank you, DJ. Olive, did you?
John is asking. Yeah, I think one of the issues we're coming across is that we currently have 2 buildings and grounds assistants, Victor and Joseph, and we don't have anybody that's actually leading like the buildings and grounds and that is able or like enthusiastic about coordinating Wexers and larger projects. And then we have neighbors like Bruce stepping up to help our well and to like Spirit for the solar panels and now for the Wexer housing. And that is partially because we're actually kind of like ideally you have a profile, like a TJ profile, that like wants to come and live there and is able to do this higher level systems.
Have we asked TJ?
If he wants to come back,
I think he should. I don't know if he wants to yet, but I think somebody should ask him.
Well, we're talking about asking him to do what's it called? Heating, ventilation, and air HVAC stuff at the dorm. He's done that work himself on different projects. And so Victor, Joseph, and I were just talking at this last staff meeting, like, what if TJ's who we hire to do that kind of work? So that could be a way of maybe lightly starting to bring him in, and then maybe he'll fall back in love with Earthdance.
You would come back if you were invited.
Yeah. One other buildings and grounds project was the back deck of the dorm that got totally replaced this past summer. And then Katie Voss also helped like make the inside of the dorm, living room and kitchen, just like a much cuter, habitable place to be. So the dorm, though it still has its mold issues and it's like a weekly Wexer task is like addressing mold and spraying bleach. The dorm is becoming like a cuter place for people to hang out. And I've even noticed like more participants want to be hanging out around the dorm as well, which was like never a thing in the past. So bravo Katie, bravo Joseph, who's not in this meeting, who rebuilt the back deck. And then we don't have anyone from the kitchen here represented, but Faith, who was our kitchen manager, transitioned out this past winter, and we kind of reconfigured how the kitchen manager position happened, which is our kind of like third iteration of reconfiguring it as this Earthdance administration that we've been under the past 3 years. And Kale is back as a kitchen manager, working alongside Adam. So Kale is sort of our off-site. He does a lot of the food purchasing, which he's very skilled at, and he does the hiring of chefs. And then Adam, who was a work exchanger who came in the summer, has stayed on, is like some of the glue at Earthdance, is so helpful in a million different ways. Adam is like the on-site kitchen manager. So he's tracking like who's eating what, and he's actually been really on top of the Tupperware, like making sure we have like a functional Tupperware. I think this is the most functional Tupperware system we've ever had at Earthdance, which is saying something. Like he kind of like him and Kale like work together and like what spices are we low in, what more appliances do we need. And I kind of wish they were here to speak to how that's going for them. But as site coordinator who's like worked with a lot of different iterations before, this has been like my favorite so far. It's taken like a huge load off of me having these two people collaborating, two like very, just capable people collaborating in the kitchen. And then fundraising. So this gala in this past winter, I believe raised 30K. A lot of that to Rasalila and Christos, who collaborated with Rasalila, and DJ and Melanie, who collaborated, and all of the Earthdance community that showed up on the online auction. And yeah, and the gala itself. And now there's sort of a like open question mark. How are we doing it? Who's taking the baton about just more fundraising? There's ideas around having this Wexer housing and the foundation of the Umbrella Barn that was just replaced be a big push for the community to fundraise behind.
Yeah. So both Rasalila and Christopher Collins have agreed to form part of the new fundraising team, and that's our first project. Yeah.
And Chandra wants
And
to be on
Chandra
it.
is here joining.
Yeah,
Okay.
thumbs up.
Okay. Cool. Okay. That's cool. Great. And yeah, two more things that come to mind. One is Emily, our bookkeeper, has retired. I don't know if everybody knows that. I think, and we now have Nadia Licia, who I believe is from what's the Russian enclave in Europe called?
Bella,
Say again.
the Russian enclave?
Belarus?
No. That's a different country. No, it's like it's surrounded by Europe. It's like a piece of Russia.
Up by Poland and the Baltics, right?
Say again? Yeah, it's in the Baltic. Yeah.
Kazakhstan?
Kaliningrad. Yes, thank you.
Kaliningrad, there we go. Yeah.
I think she's from Kaliningrad, with Ukrainian background. She's living out in Boulder, and she's a bookkeeper and a CI dancer with like a long history of like serious finance stuff. And she kind of had a switch in her life, and now she's like dancing and supporting nonprofits. And she's taken over. We've gone paperless, or almost. I think I took Earthdance paperless in everything except for the finance department, because Emily was not wanting to do that at all. And now we're actually like using QuickBooks online, as opposed to on a desktop computer that was running 24/7 in the office. I think it seems to be working like well. I think there's still some systems that we get to like buy into more, and I think things have definitely kind of like eased in that front, and I think she's going to come. She's been very interested in coming to Earthdance, and I think she's coming to the Spring Jam for the first time. So that feels good, just to like have her there physically. And also in our marketing department, I don't know if everybody knows that we have Jennifer. I don't know what's her last name. I don't know. Somebody who's been
on what's
it's
Tyra?
It's Rockner, I think. It's like Rachner, something like that, or Rochner. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that is right. And yeah, we've had a lot of marketing turnover, and she's now been here for at least 3-4 months, I think, if not more. And yeah, we're still kind of figuring it out. We're needing support there, because I think we've been working with Work Exchange, social media, because and at the moment she's holding that. And just recently now there's a friend of mine who's a designer and who lives in Argentina, and who we've been working with, who's going to try to do some things for us just to see how that works. And one big thing is that next year is our 40th anniversary. Yeah, so that means we get to do something together, and I don't know exactly what it wants to look like. And I think there's the idea to create a 40th anniversary team, and to have different activities. Maybe it's an opportunity to ask for a grant. We have an outstanding NEA grant for the Spiral and Root, and we also have a grant from the Forward Foundation that's outstanding. And yeah, we don't know exactly what the funding landscape is going to look like next year, so we'll see.
Jam.
Say again?
40-day jam.
The 40-day jam. Yeah. 40 hours. I mean that's 40 days. Yeah, they do these marathon jams,
Oh
where they
yeah,
go like 20. We
marathon.
could definitely do a 40-hour dance.
Like Gilmore Girls.
I love the 40-hour jam idea.
That's great. Who was it that
Cool.
did the sleep jam one year?
That was
Kiori.
Kiori. Yeah.
Yeah, the Dream Lab.
Okay, cool. So it is 7:10. I think it'd be nice to round out kind of soon. But I do want to open I don't know if breakout room, since everybody's sort of like the lead or representative here, the breakout room idea is more designed for when there's more community members integrated into this. So we can just say that to people watching this recording or here just to come along in person next time, and we'll have some maybe organized working groups. But for now, I just wanted to open the floor for some cross questions, like if anybody has any specific questions for team leads.
I'm curious about the membership idea, and if there's any timeline associated with that. I think 19 responses was pretty good, but I'm wondering if there's some way as part of registration for the summer gram where people are all going to be jumping and wanting to discuss, you think about Earthdance, if that's a good time to get more people on board or knowledgeable about it. I guess my other question is about the water, and it sounds good. We're going to be hooked up, so that's it.
I mean, ideally, I imagine, and I think, yeah, we haven't spoken with Christos or John around this. I could imagine that if we now have the feedback, that we actually incorporate that, and that we could start our our member drive at the summer jam. I mean, that would make a lot of sense in my mind as a and it also gives us a clear.
I think it's also probably going to be beta for a little bit, and it will be an evolving creature that hopefully evolves to serve the community as as the needs become more clear. I think the main constraint is the back end and the
Yeah, getting all the back end stuff worked out, I think is going to be a big piece.
Yeah, and
It'll take some time.
I'm interested in starting to create more spaces for like involvement, like this kind of design. Maybe have a couple of in-person community assemblies throughout the different seasonal jams that are coming up. Just sort of structures where there's like the information dissemination process right now, and I think that it's a slower arc of sort of inviting people in that kind of way. So yeah, just sort of thinking in that kind of planning and organizing sense.
That aside, I think the thing that's clear to me from the feedback is what John mentioned. I think us just doing a more coherent job of explaining that like the financial piece is not because we think this is going to be a huge source of revenue. I think people are reacting to the idea that like Earthdance is trying to like make people pay to come to Earthdance, but it's more just like how do we get any kind of clear sense of like who's committed, and part of that is some kind of energy financial exchange, but also trying, I've been pushing to also make it so that people that don't have the money, that still care about Earthdance can join. And so it's finding that balance, I think, is probably going to be something we have to figure out. before we launch it.
Hmm.
And it's almost like it's self-selecting. Everyone that answered is already, most people are here on this call. Most people that even answered the feedback form are the people that already committed. They're probably the ones that'll become members. So it's in some ways it's just trying to get like an identifiable group that hopefully has some agency and some counsel to add to, the board and the director and the staff and just the decision making and getting feedback from different people. That's really the intention of it. And I think we just, we need to be more clear about that this isn't a fundraising project.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Slightly different topic that I forgot to mention, but if we lose a lot of our Canadian and not just Canadian, but people that come from overseas, I'm thinking one idea would be to, if there's any problem at customs or getting in the States, excuse me, I have a thing going on too. Just having a refund, that letting people know if they're stopped for some reason getting into the States and can't come, that they get 100% refund as an idea or some way of dealing with that in advance.
I can give my immigration lawyer's number to have on call if anyone needs it.
Great. Are there any other questions or things that
I have a question for CICO. Who are the current members?
Currently, it's myself and Chandra and Meta and Brando and Helen Tossi and Anya with the Russian name that
Smolnikova.
And Ming.
And Ming. And I believe that we've been talking about having Chris Cahoon be the next person to shadow for on-ramping him into SICO.
Cool, thank you.
I had a question too. You said something about how members are selected that I kind of missed. How does somebody get on the CICO?
I mean, there's a number of ways they could ask to join. We could ask them to join, or sometimes there's like a public invitation on the website or an email. But the process is, sort of an interview and then a vote in the team, and then you do the shadow process, and then you're a member.
We hold them for a period. And because we all keep doing it for a while. So we hold the institutional knowledge. I might be breaking.
can anybody translate?
Yeah, but I think we got the gist of what you said.
Was Sean saying the idea is to have people do it for a while to hold institutional knowledge? Or
Yeah, I think that's what she was saying. I think that just kind of happens. Yeah.
Great.
Olive, I know you would ask Katie if she had any feedback or just experience with the Wexer program. Katie, are you interested in sharing a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I didn't like prepare anything, but just like off the cuff, I would say, yeah, like the work exchange program has been really rewarding for me. And I seemingly from a lot of the other work exchanges that I've experienced. I came in as like in the garden first, so I kind of transitioned into being like an events work exchanger a couple months after that. Yeah, I would say like so like an overarching like area of improvement that I could identify would be having there be some way to like ground the work exchange program in like a greater like have like the individuals have a greater understanding of like the larger context of Earthdance and like what the project is doing, much like this meeting, like this is sort like I heard again and again from other work exchangers, like just like not really knowing how to be plugging in to projects, and a lot of that having to go through like Olive or through like finding Victor, finding Joseph, all of these people who have like tons of other things to be doing. So yeah, there was just like a sense of like, how do we gain a little bit more like understanding of the larger context that we're plugging into so that we can be more effective like as individuals without having to be checking with people, to be able to like be a bit more like self motivated like that. But yeah, I would say like in terms of like the day-to-day like culture of like living in Earthdance has been like really wholesome and beautiful. And yeah, I was a work exchanger for a couple of months, and now I'm like been talking to Olive about continuing on in another context. So at least for me, it's like it feels like a really good place to be, and I'm excited to just like continue learning more about just what else is going on and figuring out how my gifts can be plugged into the larger project. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Would you mind just saying like what is, and you can say no if it's not feeling good, but what is a day in the life of a waxer like?
It depends on the day. Like I guess if there's an event coming up, kind of like starting, I guess I could give you sort of like a week. So like Wednesday is like just all meetings. Like in my mind, like Wednesday, not a lot, no work really gets done on Wednesday because there's like relational meeting, which is more of like a socio emotional meeting, and then there was the artistic chaplaincy, and then there was the WEX meeting, which I think happened after the staff meeting, and by then it's like 5 p.m. So yeah, so like Wednesday kind of felt like the start of the week, and then Thursday, if there was an event that week, often like Thursday would be when people would be arriving. So we would like all meet, all the on-site people would meet on Thursday and like coordinate an all clean to just like get the space ready for guests and like clean up all the like tidbits of like our detritus from just living there for the last week, make it look fresh. And then people would start rolling in, and then we'd be working the event all weekend. And then yeah, Monday and Tuesday kind of felt like the weekend, I guess. So, we'd go off into the trails, or a lot of times people, all the Wexers like kind of had their own sort of schedule around like when they like to get their tasks done. So yeah, when I was there, like a large portion of us were pretty like independent in terms of our schedule. So we would sort of just like know for the week, like what really we were trying to get done or who to coordinate with. And then we would just like kind of like figure out like when to do those things. But yeah. And then there was a lot of like something I feel that was like super supportive is like just the ability to be kind of like workshopping our individual like offerings. Like one of the Wexers was doing circling. There's opportunities at the relational meetings to like facilitate meditations, or there's obviously like the use of the studios. So there was a lot of just like playing in the studios like somatically. And yeah, I have like a pretty vibrant like off-campus life. Like I go down to like Northampton a lot, and I go to all the like ecstatic dances and CI jams like in the area and stuff. So for me, it just feels like a huge extended family. And yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. That gives me a feel.
Great. Yay. Cool. So we were able to do this in about an hour and a half. That's super great. Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to come and share, and also taking just like the time out of your life of what you do for Earthdance. Yeah, in efforts to recognize that and share that with other Earthdance community members. I think that, yeah,
Thank you for your feedback.
I'm appreciative.
Yeah, it's nice to hear all these updates. It's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any last parting words from anybody?
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Anna.
Everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anna. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Good
Good
night,
to
y'all.
see you all.
Yeah, good to see you all.
Thanks for keeping Earth
Bye.
thriving.